U.S. Defense Secretary, and Mike Huckabee, the U.S. Ambassador to Israel, openly endorsed annexation. Is this an institutional shift in the U.S. policy, do you think?
I think that these appointments were made carefully. I think that the choice either of the Secretary of Defense or the U.S. Ambassador to Israel, those people, their views are very well known to the Trump to Trump and the rest of his administration and advisors. And I think choosing them in these posts means that that Trump endorses their views, unfortunately. And Trump did speak before that Israel is small and needs to expand and needs to increase its territory. That he said on the campaign trail while he was still campaigning as the Republican nominee in the 2024 election. Afterwards, when he was asked as a president on the first Netanyahu Trump summit in Washington, when he was asked about the idea of the annexation of the West Bank, he said that Israel will do it beautifully. And of course, I'm using his own choice of incorrect English vocabulary. This is what Trump sees and what his administration sees. They support Israel all the way. They do not mind. They believe that the entirety of historical Palestine is the promised land of the Israeli people in typical evangelical fashion. They believe that this is a promised land that belongs to the Jewish people, that Israel is entitled to every inch of this land, and they are also entitled to secure their own national security, to maintain their own national security by expanding their territories even beyond historical Palestine to countries such as Lebanon and maybe even Syria and beyond. So unfortunately, we are witnessing an administration that evidently is granting Israel a blank check to do whatever it wants and to act in whatever way it wants. And if Israel already is reportedly pushing for the annexation of at least the settlements in the West Bank, maybe in the next, within Trump's current term, which means maybe in a year or two, they will actually do that, if not even before, if not in a few months. They will annex parts of the West Bank, if not the entire West Bank. And of course, this is all part of a coordinated, massive scheme of ethnic cleansing, which is basically tantamount to an act of genocide in order to cleanse the Palestinians out of their ancestral lands.
Professor El Raqab, going back to you again, sir, as we just heard Mr. Osman referring to the annexations and the expansions that have been happening lately, which the UN calls as to be the worst crisis in 18 months. Why do you think has this global diplomacy failed to enforce a ceasefire?
Certainly. When Mr. Osman spoke about the American and Israeli vision, but the most dangerously, the statement of the new U.S. ambassador in Tel Aviv by talking that the West Bank territories are the Jewish ancestors of Yehuda and Samaria. And the rulers in Tel Aviv never believed in peace with the Palestinian people. Unfortunately, the current U.S. administration it's very clear and blatant by supporting the occupation, so without any hesitation to grant the occupation, to confiscate the territories without any hesitation. So we are talking about an absolute support by the U.S. administration for the Israeli occupation. And this would never lead to peace, but rather would lead to losing hope and disprice not only the Palestinian but other peoples around the region.
Mr. Osman, now the Israel's evacuation orders, they now cover 66% of Gaza. Would you call this ethnic cleansing under international law, do you think?
Of course it is. Of course it is. Now, what the Israelis are trying to implement on the ground is a gradual depopulation of massive parts of Gaza. They begin this with a policy, they are undertaking this with a policy of establishing the so-called corridors inside the Gaza Strip. They have established the Netzarim corridor, which separates the Gaza Strip, northern Gaza from central and southern Gaza. Afterwards, they proceeded to establish the Murash corridor, which isolates the city of Rafah, which is about 20% of the Gaza Strip, from the entirety of the Gaza Strip. Of course, the city of Rafah falls on the border with Egypt. And now the city of Rafah is being depopulated entirely, and they are demolishing the city. They are flattening the city so that it will be a no man's land 5 kilometers deep between Egypt and Gaza, to ensure that Gaza is completely isolated from the world. And then they proceeded to establish the Kisufim corridor, which is supposed to bisect the Gaza Strip, separating Khan Yunis from central Gaza, and also the Biflisim corridor, which separates Beit Hanun, Beit Lahia, and Jabalia at the outmost north of the Gaza Strip from the city of Gaza. So they're turning Gaza into little cantons with the goal of basically trying to push the entire population of the Gaza Strip in less than 40% of its landmass.
Thank you, sir. That was Mohamed